Just muscle through it. All right, I think we're good to go. Welcome, everyone. We will call this meeting to order on Thursday, November 20th, 3:33. We have a quorum, so the first order of business is to approve the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Mari. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? So the minutes are approved. Next order of business is to approve the claims for this month. Is there a motion to approve the claims?
I do have a question on one of the claims from HWC. It actually showed as being from like January, February of 2025. Was that reviewed to make sure that it wasn't submitted for payment, or that they hadn't requested that before? It's actually our error and not their error.
Greg, good night. I'm going to go from memory. I was on the thread. He was directing, because Sean had the same questions, and I think they just never billed us, if my memory serves me correct.
Okay.
And Sean's not here today, but I was copied on those emails when they went through. I believe it was just
Okay,
an error.
so we have confirmed that.
Yes, I think it was an error on their end in not submitting them to us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Is there, assuming, now that that is confirmed, is there a motion to approve the claims?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the claims, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Abstentions? So claims are approved for this month. I see no unfinished business, so we will move on to new business. The first order of new business is the TIF presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm Andy Mauser with Baker Tilly. We serve as financial advisor to the Redevelopment Commission. Started working with the city around this time last year, so this will be our second time going through this presentation. And this is really intended to be, I guess, twofold. One, there is a new requirement that was put into place a few years ago that all redevelopment commissions around the state of Indiana have to hold a public meeting to discuss the budget, the long-term plan, and the impact of your TIF areas on the overlapping taxing units. So this presentation is designed to meet that annual requirement, and because of that, I did include, or did leave some copies of this on the back table in the room in case any members of the public would like a copy here today. But then also, this is really intended to be an annual update and kind of give you an overview of where your TIF areas are in 2025, where we expect them to be in 2026, and many of you are probably familiar with Senate Enrolled Act 1, Senate Bill 1 that was passed this year. And so we do anticipate some changes to your TIF area, primarily in the Pendleton Pike portion, so I'll go through that as well. So try to be as brief as I can, but certainly feel free to stop me with any questions as we go through the presentation. First few slides, just kind of an overview and contact information. So, and I do have 2 slides per page here, so as I walk through, I'll go to the third page here in slide 5 would be kind of where I'll start. Just to give you an overview, any TIF areas that are created in the state of Indiana really have 2 layers to them. One is what's known as the redevelopment or economic development area, and that's where you have the ability to spend the TIF dollars. The second layer is what's known as the allocation area, and that's where the taxes are actually collected from. You as a redevelopment commission actually have 2 economic development areas. You have the Pendleton Pike economic development area, and then the Meyer Plastics economic development area. Well, you do have 2 EDAs. Within those 2 EDAs, you actually have a total of 3 allocation areas. So within Pendleton Pike, you have the Pendleton Pike allocation area, and then also the separate Monarch allocation area as well, consisting of the former Monarch facility. Slide 6 just looks at the mechanics of how a TIF area works over time. All of your TIF areas are somewhere in the middle of this graph. They've been established for a number of years. The base assessed value is set, and you've had growth within all three TIF areas. That blue box represents the incremental assessed value, the growth that's occurring within the TIF areas that you're capturing as TIF dollars. And then the goal of all your TIF areas will be for you to continue to invest, see additional growth, and then as you reach the expiration, that assessed value will all be returned to the tax base. Your TIF areas all will start to expire in the late 2030s, so you're still 10, 15 years away from reaching those expirations, which are represented by the red box on the right part of the graph there. Next page just looks at how the TIF calculation works. If I'm a taxpayer within any of your TIF areas, TIF is not an additional tax or additional special assessment on my property. I would continue to pay property taxes as I always have. It's really a breakdown that occurs at the county level, where a portion of my taxes would be distributed to the tax base, and then a portion of my taxes would be distributed back to the Redevelopment Commission in the form of TIF dollars. And it's really just that incremental or captured amount, the growth that occurs within each TIF area that is captured and sent back to you as the Redevelopment Commission. Slide 8 looks at permitted uses of TIF. Traditionally, TIF was used for capital projects that were in serving and benefiting TIF areas. So that was typically public infrastructure, things like sewer lines, roads, sidewalks. And in recent years, we've seen more flexibility granted by the state as far as what TIF dollars can be used for. There's the ability to use TIF for public safety capital projects. So you can buy police cars, build fire stations, recreation facilities, things like parks and trails have become an acceptable use of TIF here in the past few years. TIF can be used for things like job training programs and also partnerships with your local school corporations. And then most recently, here within the last couple of years, TIF dollars can actually start to be used for police and fire operating. So it can be used to pay salaries, but only, again, for public safety, mainly police and fire there. And then on slide 9, we do show a bit of history on TIF areas. Before 1995, any TIF areas established around the state had unlimited lives. You don't have any TIF areas that fall within that pre-1995 bucket. But then areas that were set up between 95 and 2008, which includes the Pendleton Pike and Monarch allocation areas, those have 30-year lifespans from the date that they were established. And then any new TIF areas, which includes Meyer Plastics and any other allocation areas you would consider in the future, do have 25-year lifespans from the date that any debt obligations are issued. So that's just a quick overview on TIF, and then just to give you a brief summary of your 3 allocation areas. On slide 11, we include some information about your Pendleton Pike allocation area. Was set up in 2007, or excuse me, 2007. So it does have a 30-year life and will last collect TIF in 2038. Actually, last year you brought in about $623,000 in 2024. For 2025, our estimate for the year is $703 or $703,000. So you're actually up from 2024 to 2025, and through your spring collections, you were right around $400,000 for the year. So you're at about 57% for the half year, so actually a little bit ahead of schedule from where we'd like to see you with the half year collections. 2026, which was just certified by the county here recently, we do anticipate a pretty big jump from about $703,000 to $830,000. And then in 2027, the action that you took here recently to remove a couple of negative parcels from the TIF area will increase the TIF further. So we do anticipate, even with no additional growth, in 2027, you should increase from about $830,000 to about $862,000. I did mention Senate Bill 1 earlier, so it will add some additional deductions and credits, primarily for 2% properties that are within your TIF area. So that would include any rental, residential, things like that. So we do anticipate some decline from 2027 to 2031 as those new deductions are phased in. But any growth that you have here within the next few years could certainly wash out some of those negative impacts that we'll see from Senate Bill 1. But even with the growth you've had in 26, the removal of those parcels in 2027, that should more than offset the anticipated decline that we expect from Senate Bill 1 here in the next few years. For Pendleton Pike, next slide, we do highlight your outstanding bond obligations. So you have a 2011 bond that has one payment remaining, so those will be fully paid off this coming January. And then you have a 2022 bond that will be fully repaid in 2039. And then on page 13, we show a comparison. So what do we expect you will bring in TIF dollars each year? What remaining bond payments you have outstanding on both the 2011 and 2022 bonds, and then what we expect you'll have remaining in TIF dollars for other projects and other expenses. So you can see for Pendleton Pike, again, bringing in about $700,000 here in 2025. You've got $185,000 payment on the 2011 bonds, $103,000 on the 2022 bonds, which leaves you about $414,000 in additional dollars for projects. And that number should grow, again, as your TIF grows here in 2026 and 2027, and as well as the 2011 bonds being fully repaid with your December distribution coming up here next month. Next few slides then focus on the Monarch portion. Again, Monarch is part of the Pendleton Pike area, but is its own separate allocation area. It was set up in 2008, so it also has a 30-year life. You'll last collect in 2039. In 2024, you brought in about $667,000. 2025, we have you at about $708,000, and you're right around 48% for the year. You brought in $343,000 in the spring, so right in line. And then in 2026, as the value of that building has increased year over year, current estimates would put it at about $815,000 next year. Just one bond obligation outstanding in the Monarch area, about $1.5 million remaining on that. That'll be fully repaid through 2033. And then on slide 17, much like we did for Pendleton Pike, we have a summary there of what we expect you'll bring in each year, and then the bond payments that are owed. This one is a bit unique. It was a developer bond, and so really the only thing that the Redevelopment Commission is obligated to pay is the TIF generated in the Monarch area. You'll see in 25, there is a slight shortfall on the bonds, but we do expect with the values for 26 and beyond, it should flip back into the positive and give you a little bit of surplus TIF to work with in the future. We do include just some potential projects that could be paid since Pendleton Pike does have healthy coverage, especially within the main portion of the area. So TIF can continue to be used for things like property acquisition, utility improvements, landscaping, any other economic development and redevelopment opportunities. And then this is an area you may have the potential to bond against in the future, again, as you do have pretty healthy TIF revenues coming in over the next few years. And then the last section, again, for Meyer Plastics, this one is more similar to Monarch, and it is a single site TIF area with a single bond obligation. It was set up in 2018, so it falls within that 25-year lifespan on TIF areas. In 2024, you brought in about $217,000. 2025, we've got you at about $241,000, and you brought in almost exactly half of that, about $121,000 in the spring. And then we do anticipate some growth there in 2026 to about $311,000. Much like the other areas, you have a bond obligation outstanding there, 2018 bonds that'll have payments through 2043. And then on slide 22, you'll see your anticipated coverage on your debt going forward there. In 2026, again, we estimate about $311,000 coming in. Debt payments are only about $178,000, so you've got pretty healthy surplus of about $130,000 going forward in that area. And then the last couple slides, I mentioned the last piece of the annual requirement is to discuss the impact of your TIF areas on the overlapping taxing units. The overlapping taxing units include the county, the township, the school, the library, any of those taxing units that overlap your TIF areas. And what we try to highlight on slide 25 is a calculation of how your tax rates and tax levies work for each of those units. So we include for the county, for the township, for all those units, You can see total tax rates in the city, including all the overlapping units, are about $2.72 per $100 of assessed value. As a redevelopment commission, you capture the majority of that. You capture about $2.54 of that tax rate, as you do not have the ability to capture any taxes paid towards the school referendum, which is about 17 cents. But within your 3 TIF areas, primarily in Pendleton Pike and Monarch, you capture about $65 million of assessed value, and that generates about $1.6 million in annual TIF across the 3 areas. What we show in the second scenario on that page is if you were to take all that assessed value and your TIF areas ended today, and all that assessed value was placed back into the tax base, when you capture TIF dollars, you're able to capture the dollars that are paid directly. If you were to pass through or end your TIF areas, it's not the dollars that would be given back to the overlapping taxing units, but rather the assessed value. And because all those units are constrained by maximum levy, they only can raise so much in property tax dollars on a given year. What putting that assessed value back in the tax base would do is actually bring down tax rates rather than increase the dollars that those units are receiving. And what we show in that second scenario is by putting almost $66 million of assessed value in the tax base, you would actually just bring down overlapping tax rates by about 3 cents. So again, about 3 cents on a $2.72 tax rate. A good chunk of that would be the city's tax rate, which may have some benefits to reduce some circuit breakers and other constraints on general fund. But by far, especially from the city's perspective, your greatest use of TIF is to continue to capture those dollars, continue to reinvest, and hopefully see additional growth continue to occur. And then again, I mentioned, but I would also highlight again the schools. That referendum rate, they do benefit from any growth that happens inside the TIF areas as well as outside the TIF areas. So there's really no impact to the schools by you capturing dollars as far as that referendum rate, which I know is a huge funding source for them as well. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Again, that hopefully meets your annual requirement, and we're certainly available for any questions you might have.
Can you run through for me the description of that last page again? I was trying to follow it. I'm not sure I was able to do that.
No, certainly. So one argument we hear a lot of times with TIF is redevelopment commissions are capturing so much in dollars, and for you it's 66 million of assessed value, almost $1.6 million in dollars that you bring in per year. And the argument we hear, and that's not just here, I mean really around the state, is if you as a redevelopment commission were capturing $1.6 million, that's $1.6 million that would go to the schools, that would go to the library, would go to all those other overlapping units. And the way property taxes work in Indiana, that's not the case. So every unit of local government is constrained by what's known as maximum levy. So the city can only raise so much in property tax dollars, the schools can only raise so much in property tax dollars. And if their tax base grows, that doesn't always mean additional property tax dollars coming to that unit of local government. And because they can continue to raise the same amount of money, if there's more assessed value, it essentially brings down tax rates. So if we had 100 people in this room and we needed to raise $100, everybody could chip in $1. I guess the equivalent example would be if now all of a sudden we have 110 people in this room, we're not going to raise $110. We can still raise that same $100. So now the tax rate declines, everybody in the room would chip in 90-some cents, and we get to the same amount of money. So as a redevelopment commission, you have the ability to actually capture that growth and continue to reinvest it, whereas if you didn't capture it, there would be benefits, but that would primarily be back to taxpayers as opposed to local government. And again, as we show here, it's about 3 cents on a $2.70 tax rate. So pretty minor impact on the tax rate, certainly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. With nothing else, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andy. That now we are ready to move on to the next item, which is pertains to the public hearing regarding Pendleton Pike allocation area.
Yeah, so I can give an introduction and then kind of give you some instruction on next steps. So as you'll remember, last month, this commission passed a second amending declaratory resolution for Pendleton Pike. So the process is essentially have multiple steps, three steps in the process. You took your initial action last month. That item then was forwarded to the Common Council, who considered a resolution last night related to this. That resolution related to the Pendleton Pike matter did pass unanimously from the council. You also now have an obligation to hold a public hearing. So we noticed in 2 newspapers at least 10 days in advance the intent to hold a public hearing on this matter. So you will need to open a public hearing, call for any comments related to this resolution, and then if there are none, or after those are completed, then you can go ahead and close the public hearing. Depending on comments that might come from the public hearing, you can choose to make modifications to your previous action, or you can move forward with the resolution as presented to you. At that point, you can vote on that confirmatory resolution, and that would conclude the necessary steps, on your steps necessary to amend the existing Pendleton Pike redevelopment area. So that's the matter that's before you. So procedurally, you would essentially recess your current meeting, open a public hearing, call for public comment, entertain a motion to close the public hearing, and then reconvene your current meeting. So that's procedurally the steps that need to be taken by the commission.
Okay. So recess just means we're interrupting it, right? We don't need to adjourn.
Yeah,
Adjourn.
don't adjourn. You're just recessing.
Okay. So
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to see if there's a motion to recess so that we can open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Becky.
Mhm.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, then we are recessed. The public hearing is now open.
Yeah, so I generally would, you open it at 3:55. I would encourage you to call for comments. And I usually call 2 or 3 times for any public comments, and then you
Okay.
accept a motion to close.
Are there any public comments regarding the Pendleton Pike allocation area? One more call for public comments for pertaining to the Pendleton Pike allocation area. Hearing and seeing none in the room, we will close the public hearing comment period. Do we need to take a
Yeah, I generally would take a motion to close the public hearing and reconvene.
Okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing and reconvene the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Becky. We are now moving on to Resolution 4, 2025, and that's the confirmation of second amending declaratory resolution of the Lawrence Redevelopment Commission amending the plan for the Pendleton Pike.
Yeah, so you have a resolution before you that essentially confirms the previous actions of this commission, which is to modify by removing 2 parcels from the Pendleton Pike allocation area. The matters that you're confirming those actions and that this would be in full force and effect upon your approval today. Upon your completion, we'll have you sign this document, and then we will notify DLGF. We will record this instrument, as I believe statute requires you to do, and then it will be that will be amended on a going forward basis. The allocation area will be amended on a going forward basis, which, as Andy noted in his comments today, has a positive financial impact to the commission on a going forward basis. Pretty substantial amount of money, as you noticed.
Russell, quick question. Does the approval of that declaratory statement, does that include the impact assessment portion of that document?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. So we, another obligation that you have is to have a financial impact statement that's drafted and created, and that was distributed to you in advance of today's meeting. It's also sent out to all the overlapping taxing districts. It was sent out 10 days before today's hearing, so they have notice of the intent to consider this, and then also what, going forward, that impact will have on their ability to tax and collect in this area. So it would be based on the presentation of those, of that impact statement as well.
Okay. So just a question from, I guess, my lack of familiarity. In the impact summary, based on scenario 3 in there, it says commission plans or believes the plan would not fully occur without amending the area. Is that typical language in a document like this?
I'll have Andy come and answer that. It's
Okay.
his document, so I'll have him defend it.
That is fairly standard language. So within the impact statement, we do show 3 scenarios. The second scenario shows you the positive impact to the TIF by taking out those negative parcels. It's about $2.9 million of assessed value, which should bring in another $75,000 of TIF.
Mm-hmm.
Those existing parcels, and I think where that finding that would have been in your original declaratory resolution comes from, is that anytime you have a TIF area that has what we call decrement parcels, or parcels that maybe started at $1 million and are now worth $500,000, those negatives have to get filled in by positive growth elsewhere in the TIF area before the TIF area can capture any of that growth. So these 2 parcels that are being removed really are, I would say, a drag on your existing revenues, and by taking out those negatives, it gets your TIF, back to where it really should be without those negative parcels included. So it gives you the ability to, fully capture dollars and continue to complete the projects in accordance with the plan.
Okay. I guess where I'm struggling a little bit is that we have a fairly high-level strategic plan. I don't think we really have a tactical plan. And while I agree that taking those parcels out is certainly beneficial, I don't know that that not taking them out keeps us from meeting a strategic plan.
Other than it takes $75,000 a year away from you.
Understand.
So,
But it's also 75 that's not allocated at this point. So it's more, it may just be semantics and lack of familiarity on my part as to how these types of documents are worded.
Yeah, I will tell you that I've not seen a large number of economic development plans that have a huge number of identified projects unless they are a site-specific project. So the goal is to, I've seen them as broad as the TIF district will, engage in all allowable uses. So, I mean, that's a very broad, obviously, statement, but the goal here is to, create revenue opportunities so that you have flexibility when a project comes along, that you don't have to come back and modify your plan every single time something comes. This was done in 2007. The original plan was done in 2007. Life is different in Lawrence in 2025 than it was in 2007. But you don't have to come back and, the commission hasn't had to come back and modify their plan every single time the project was identified, as long as it fit within kind of broad parameters. The one exception to that is, identifying parcels that you'd like to acquire. That is traditionally, I don't identify parcels that you would want to acquire unless you have either a specific plan for them or a project that would require the acquisition of those. And that is a component of a plan. If you're going to identify parcels, acquire parcels, that you need to identify them with specificity. So that would be a reason to modify, and that would be something that have to come back, go through this multi-step process to make happen. So yeah, I would say I would defend the broad nature of it as It's typically a 25-year kind of document. Things change, but having less money certainly negatively impacts your ability to make impact within the allocation area. And so having more money allows you more opportunities, and that cannot be completed without the removal of these parcels.
Thank you.
It might be semantics, but I think it is justifiable semantics.
And Russell, just a quick question. I think last month, because that was my first meeting, so just to confirm again, there's no way that it negatively impacts the two parcels that you want to remove, which are Esquire Plaza and the property to the southwest, or in
Yes,
that
correct.
vicinity?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no negative impacts to them. It doesn't change their tax rate. It doesn't, change value associated with it. It just is about collections and distribution of those collections.
Do we now vote for Resolution 4?
Yeah, you take a motion.
Okay, could I have a motion for Resolution 4, 2025?
So moved.
Thank you, Mari. There's a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Becky. All those in favor of approving Resolution 4, 2025, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Then that motion passes, and Resolution 4, 2025 is approved. I believe now we're moving on to public hearing regarding the Sunnyside to Oaklandon Economic Development Area.
Yeah, so you might not have seen it via email today. That item needs to be tabled. This item was the economic development area, the adoption of the economic development area was sent to committee by the council last night. And so it's not eligible for action by you today. So I would just ask that you table the consideration of Resolution 2025. My intention would be, I believe it's going to be considered by the Committee of the Whole before the next council meeting, assuming that it gets a favorable recommendation and we can, favorable action is taken by the council and we can meet the 10-day requirement. And we would try to bring it back to you in December, but I don't want to spend another $500 of your money to advertise it unless and until we know that the council has taken their action. So it could be come back here in December. It could be something that does not make it back until your January meeting.
Okay. So
Just an action to table, a motion to table would be appropriate.
okay, and that would also include anything that, the subsequent item, which would be to vote on that post public hearing. All right, is there a motion to table the public hearing for the economic redevelopment area at Sunnyside to Oaklandon?
So moved.
Thank you, Becky. Second. Thank you, Michael. All those, do we have to take a vote on it? All those in favor of tabling that agenda item, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? So that motion passes, and we will pick that up when it is available to us to take action on. The last agenda item in new business is survey matters.
So there's two survey matters, and we put them on there broadly, in part because we were trying to collect proposals for you for this commission. So I have one, and then Greg has one to present. So I would be asking for the commission's approval to engage with HWC Engineering for a fee of $15,000 for survey work related to the creation of legal descriptions and exhibits for a vacation petition for property which is located at 8101 Harrison Drive. So the purpose of this request is the city currently owns a parcel, an undeveloped parcel in Harrison Park that is oddly configured based on previously recorded plats, some of which are more than 100 years old. So there is some unvacated alleys and public right-of-way that make this parcel undevelopable as it exists today. However, if we complete the vacation process, it would become a piece of property that could be residentially developed. And so when I worked on Mayor Whitfield's transition team, this was one of the items that the previous executive director for the Redevelopment Commission said he hadn't gotten to yet, but it is one of the few unutilized or underutilized pieces of municipally owned property within the city. And so this is necessary to get the appropriate documents, and then our office would handle the vacation petition through the plat committee downtown, and hope with the goal being that this would create a usable and developable piece of residential property in a neighborhood that I think there would be strong interest for someone to buy and develop this parcel if it was buildable. So the request I have is to engage HWC for that purpose, and their quote for that is a $15,000 lump sum.
And Russell, that's pretty standard cost for a job like this?
Yeah, given where it is, given the age of the plats, given that it's an urban environment, given it's an odd, a lot of times you go on a vacation is, a rectangle and it's 50 feet by 40 feet and it's pretty simple. This is not. It is kind of back or sideways T-shaped. It's not the same width on all angles. You have about 4 or 5 surrounding property owners, and so there's a lot of complexity to it. So given the complexity, I would say yes, this is, I would think it's an appropriate amount, because it's not as simple as going out and doing a 40 by 50 rectangle. That's pretty easily noticeable.
Russell, will you explain just a little bit more about what this process is between you and this engineering firm? I mean, is the goal to figure out what the appropriate use is? Is that what
The goal here would be to, so long as it remains dedicated alleyways or dedicated public rights of way, it's not, you can't develop on it. And so the goal here would be, if you go through the vacation process, then the title to the land passes back to adjoining property owners. And so the goal here would be you would go back, vacate this right of way, and then title to that usually is half goes to the north property owner, half goes to the south property owner. And that would create a lot that's developable. The lot today, instead of being a square or rectangle, is like, it has a missing corner out of it because that's an old right-of-way that has never been vacated. I don't know if the developer just missed it. I don't know if, that development was done in the 50s and 60s, so I don't know if the developer just missed it. I don't know if there was some reason that they didn't vacate it. I don't know how the city came entitled to this property, but the city is, so they pay to maintain it, to mow it, maintain it, make sure nothing nefarious is happening on it. So the goal here would be take it off the city's obligation, make it a developable piece of property, take it away from being a city obligation, and be able to put it back into public to use by a homeowner. And that process won't be completed by this work. We'll then have to go through an appraisal, an RFP process, so there will be a public process to make it available for sale.
would there be additional funds that would be required then?
Yeah, so then you'll have to go through you have to get an appraisal done, but ultimately, that's a requirement of statute that you have to have a property appraised before it's available for sale. So at that point, yeah, you would appraise it, but it'd be premature to appraise it today because it's not in the final shape and size it will be in following the vacations occurring.
So if those right-of-ways and, well, the right-of-ways and the alleyways are removed, does that property still have access then
Yes,
to
it
the
does.
streets?
Yeah, this is, I apologize for not bringing a photograph. It's north of the railroad tracks, and there's no, you can, if you walk by this today, you would not know that it's right-of-way. It's overgrown. It looks like a residential lot. So it's not, and the stuff behind, no one's utilizing this other than the people who live immediately adjacent to it anyway. So there's no deprivation of access. That's something we have to prove before we go through the vacation, that we're not impacting public access to any of these properties.
So this is on the north side of the railroad tracks,
Correct.
across from the old Marsh building, back in that neighborhood. but in the southern part?
It's north of the railroad tracks. It's on the east side of Franklin Road, not the west side of Franklin Road.
East side of
Yeah,
Franklin Road?
correct.
Okay.
Kind of by the trustees' office.
Or, yes,
by
yes,
the
across from the
trustees.
old Marsh building
Yeah.
back in there, yeah. Okay.
Without getting into the weeds on financials, these costs that would be incurred would be more than recoverable by the city in subsequent tax payments and whatnot?
Correct, yes, yeah. So I mean, that's the intention, is to, you're going to expend a little bit of money. You'll ultimately sell the city, probably it's been generally handled by the Redevelopment Commission. The city would convey it to the Redevelopment Commission to sell it. So you would recoup some of your costs for preparing it for sale. And then the city would recover, obviously, costs through savings of not having to maintain it anymore, and then through taxes that are generated by it being privately owned.
What do you need from us procedurally?
Just need your approval, authorization to engage HWC for that amount of $15,000.
Are there any other questions before we take a motion? Can I have a motion to authorize the city to engage HWC at $15,000 to do the survey work?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Becky. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mari. All those in favor of authorizing the city for this matter, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Abstentions? So that is approved. The second survey matter?
This pertains to the DNR property just north of 59th Street, not far from City Hall. Most of you recognize it as the Cinder Track property. And what we need, we've been in discussions with DNR about entering into a multi-year lease for that property to look at for public use, possibly think of a concert pavilion or amphitheater type of structure. They've been very open to that. We've done a phase 1 report, a phase 2 report. The next step is to do a survey. So what I am asking for is so we can identify the exact part that we'll be leasing from, kind of carve out that section from DNR. So what I need is, I've contacted JQOL to do the survey, and what I'm asking for, the next step is to get the survey complete before we enter into a lease with the state. And so I'm asking for a approval for maybe, I don't have a price, but not to exceed $15,000 motion so we can take the next steps to move on that property.
Where does the public comment period come in for a conversion of a property like this that is utilized by community members?
Yeah, so this is all preliminary, obviously. To the extent there were going to be, for example, public dollars spent, I mean, you go through a public bidding process, and this body, the reuse authority, the Parks Board, whoever's going to contribute to that, it would have at least those public actions to occur. So that would be an indirect mechanism by there to be public feedback on it. I mean, I can tell you that the discussions that I've been part of are about making improvements to things like the parking lot that's widely utilized, considering whether or not you could make a restroom solution there. But there is no intent to close down the track or to make it not available for public use. It would be something that's interior of that, so that the track could continue to be utilized.
All
So
right.
there's no, as someone who lives near it and has utilized it when I've attempted to become a runner again, it is widely used. I drive by it all the time, and it's very heavily used. So there's no intention to prevent use of it. The intention is to enhance usability, not only for what it's used for today, but also, with the concept of having, other opportunities or other public events there. So that's the.
Thank you.
ongoing intent.
I appreciate that clarification.
I'll even build on
So,
that. The
Russell,
mayor's-
before you step away,
Let me build on that too. Not only is it intent not to take that away, the mayor's been adamant that it would continue, that she wants to add another feature to that property as opposed to take something away.
Thank you.
so if, assuming that we authorize the funding for the survey, who would be responsible for that next step of what that property becomes? Does that fall under RDC or does that fall elsewhere?
I think that's to be determined. I think that it may be a collective effort by a variety of public bodies, given, depending on what the scale is and what the cost is. So I can't stand here today. I've been tangentially involved in it, but I can tell you that there's no plan sitting on the shelf to walk over tomorrow with a funding mechanism ready to go. So there's still work to be done on it, both from design concepts and funding concepts, both.
One other thing, the next step would be to get the survey and then get a lease agreement with the DNR, which conceptually, we've kind of talked about it, but obviously until it's written and agreed upon by the state and by the city, something could go south after that.
So would that be a lease agreement in and of itself?
Yes.
Let me finish my question.
Sure.
Or would that begin with like I'll call it a memorandum of understanding? Because if we move forward with a lease, we're committed to a lease and we don't have a definite, yeah, we're gonna go do this and here's what it looks like, we could end up leasing property that we don't have a workable plan.
Well, so they have to, if we were leasing it from the state, they would have to approve that the city does the maintenance costs ongoing for the property. Those are the things we're going to have to work out, as well as what type of structure, as council mentioned, possibly a public restroom that can be utilized not just for events, but also for people use the track on a daily basis, things like that, that would enhance the property. So those things would be the next steps, but the first part is to determine the confines, the area that we're actually talking about, and working out, making sure that we agree upon that. Because what we're talking about is not only the cinder track property, but the area that is adjacent going back towards the east that would butt up against the utility property line. So think of a kind of a rectangle, then a small square.
Yeah, what used to be the PT track, PT course.
Yeah.
Are there any questions about this second survey matter? Hearing none, can I have a motion to authorize the city to pursue a contract for this survey need not to exceed $15,000?
I don't know that I'm 100% sure about the, I don't know that we have enough details. I mean, are we paying anything right now for that property as is?
It's DNR's
Right,
property.
exactly.
Right. Yeah, right now, they own it, they maintain it.
But I'm not sure that we have I don't feel like I've heard that we have a plan in place if it does turn out to be the size of property that we're hoping, or, I mean,
We don't.
do you have a pretty good?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not going to, the city's not going to enter into an agreement with an architectural firm to design something if for some reason we don't end up with a lease with the state.
Right, so we could do the survey and just end up walking away, I guess is what I'm saying. There's that possibility
Yeah,
too.
they could always say no, or we could say the terms and conditions. Right now, just the verbal, it's a very low-cost lease. And we actually originally talked about buying it. They weren't interested in that, but there is verbally an interest in entering into a long-term lease at a very low cost.
Can I add, this is not legal advice, I can add context. For 12 and a half years, 13 years I've been on the Reuse Authority, we've been pursuing someone to talk to us about leasing the track, developing the track, doing something to improve that. The first time we've had anybody from the state engage in a conversation with us has been this year. So we have long pursued this opportunity, and I think, you know, I guess my view of it is part of being in the development business, which the Redevelopment Commission is that you sometimes take risks on things that you don't have everything ironed out for. But a survey is going to be a necessary requirement of this to get to a lease. The discussions that I've been part of have been low dollar, as it might be overstating how much it's going to cost. $1 maybe what we're talking about. So there's not going to be a huge expenditure for securing the property, but DNR will not sell it to the city or to the Reuse Authority, to the Redevelopment Commission. They will not sell it. There's already been funds expended on due diligence. There's been a phase 1 and a phase 2 that have already been completed on the site to confirm that it's acceptable to move forward with it. So there's already been public funds expended on this process, which are appropriate. As a developer, you should do those things. But the survey is the next step in that. Can't negotiate a lease if you don't know what area you're taking. And so I think this, from a developer perspective, this is the next logical
The next step. And you've confirmed they don't have any plans, nobody has any plans to take the track away.
No.
That was my biggest concern, even hearing about the project, because it's unique.
Oh, I think as council mentioned, it's a very active site already.
Right.
In all times of the day.
Exactly.
And
So at the very
months
least,
of the
we'll
year.
lease it and you'll improve, you said the parking lot, build a restroom hopefully, and that at the very least.
Yeah, that's the goal. It all comes down to money, but that's the goal, is to enhance the property, add a feature like a public restroom that could be used not only for public events, but for just those people that casually use it for exercising activities and things like that.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Thanks for the question and for the clarifying
What's the
comments.
projected source of those funds for those improvements? Or we don't know yet?
No, go ahead.
We don't control the property yet. It'd be premature for anybody to be out to doing that. I mean, part of what a grant application is going to ask you is, do you control the property? We don't have a letter of intent. We don't have, so you don't have the ability to go out and secure funds for a property you don't control yet or have any modicum of control over yet. So that's one issue. I mean, and without having it under control, or what that control looks like, that may modify too what opportunities you have. For example, a little bit of a tangent, but Civic Plaza down here, Reuse Authority owned that. Some of the grant funding required us to convey that to the city. So the city Parks Department had to be the owner of it in order for us to pursue some grant funding. And that was a condition of those grants. So, without us having even leasehold interest, the city doesn't necessarily have standing to go pursue that. And that may rule in or out certain grant opportunities if the city only has a leasehold interest versus having an ownership interest. So, those things, those funding opportunities could vary depending on if it's a 25-year lease or a 99-year lease. Those might modify what grant opportunities or funding opportunities you have. So again, I think it's premature to have explored too many of those because you don't yet control the property.
One last thing to reiterate something council said. I wasn't involved over the last 15 years. In fact, I'm still just coming in to city government here, coming up on a year. But the actual director of DNR was here again this week and sat down with us and kind of give updates and what next steps are, knowing, just to make sure everything was still on track in discussions. That I know, has made 2 trips to Lawrence in the last 7 months, personally, not just sending employees over here, because the concept, they're supportive of it, which I think is, to your comment, pretty unusual.
Hearing no other questions, I'm going to see again if we might have a motion to authorize this second survey matter.
So moved.
Thank you, Mari. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor of authorizing the second survey matter, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? That second survey matter is authorized. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next agenda item is the Executive Director's Report.
Sure. Greg Goodnight, Executive Director of the Redevelopment Commission. So just in the since last month's report, part of what I've done is to help coordinate some of the items that you've all been voting on and hearing from today. If you didn't hear, now this is through FHRA, but they passed Monday night a new housing development this past Monday that on the southeast corner of Otis and Lee Road. It's 2 phases to the project. I think it's 102 apartments in phase 1 with some mixed use tied into that first building. This will be nice market rate apartments with pool, pickleball courts for the residents, things like that. I've had multiple discussions with other developers for possible mixed use in multifamily development. Everything that most of my conversations we have in the development world tie in some piece of residential. So we're really trying to push residential so that our businesses here have permanent live-in customers, and so it's usually residential or mixed use. I've had multiple now, probably 3 or 4 discussions with the developer who wants to build over 150 new single-family homes. They've identified the parcels they're looking at. I'm hoping that over the winter we get those details completed, but that seems to be on track. A lot of those discussions with that developer and some of the other developers involve the utilities. There are always capacity issues and sewer flow rate issues within the city, so anytime we have an opportunity, we have to run it past utilities kind of to make sure that the capacity is there and that the plan meets their abilities to handle any of that flow. And last, certainly not least, been working with BCA on multiple phase 1 and phase 2. We have a grant that helps pay for this, but we, on phase 1 and phase 2 of properties, one of them we just talked about at DNR, but there's also been some of that used over in the Oak Landon area for potential development there too.
Any questions for the Executive Director?
Thank you all
Thank
very
you,
much.
Mr. Goodnight.
Thank you.
Any other business to come before the commission?
Yeah, unfortunately, when I put the agenda together, we omitted the spending plan obligation. So I submitted to you via email today the draft spending plan. If you'll remember, this is only the second year, a couple holdovers from last year, but this is only the second year that this has been required of redevelopment commissions. It is, it's not a budget, but it's treated almost like one. So in that spending plan, the form that I circulated earlier today was kind of created with, I think AIM created it in consultation with DLGF, but this is what I use for my redevelopment commission clients. It lays out kind of maximum expenditures in certain categories. You will notice that the total maximum expenditures is almost $6 million. You obviously, Andy just gave you a report, you don't have $6 million to spend, but we have to list maximum numbers in there. So what I tried to do in creating this, first of all, the total debt payments is pretty dialed in. That's based on the report that you just received. I tried to go through, and last year there were some numbers utilized for grant opportunities that were kind of nominal amounts, but I left those in there in case those opportunities arose. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The step really, if you got something that said, hey, we want a $250,000 grant, we only had $50,000 written down, We have to modify it, we have to upload it to Gateway. It's a relatively simple process, but tried to put in here things that I thought might be opportunities for next year. The only other kind of dialed-in numbers that I utilize, if you go down to letter L, talks about expenditure proceeds of bonds for certain projects, and that's $1.8 million. That's what you have in bond proceeds, so that would be one where you would not be able to exceed that because you don't have more than approximately $1.8 million in bond proceeds there. Professional expenses, that's a high number. I do not bill the Redevelopment Commission that much in a year, but that is a professional fees, and that's in line with what you approved in your last year's spending plan. So this is an obligation that you need to complete before December 1st, so today is the day that it needs to be completed, and then we will upload this appropriately, and I believe this is also then is forwarded to the council as well. So that that would be the last item I have on today's agenda. I apologize for it not being on the agenda proper. That was my oversight when I helped Greg and Ayana put it together.
Thanks for bringing this before the commission. Is there a motion to approve the annual spending plan?
I did a quick question before we get there, I think. So you said this is a requirement annually to submit, and who drives that requirement? Is that a state requirement?
Yes, it was created by statute. There's a statutory creation, I think in the 23 legislative session that laid this out as an annual obligation to be completed before December 1st each year.
So this then is through the Common Council goes to the state? Is that
Yeah,
what's
we
recorded?
present it to, I think it's forwarded to the Common Council, but your funds are not subject to the appropriation process through the Common Council, and so these are funds that are under your purview and control.
Okay.
And then the Controller's Office, serving as the treasurer of this organization, is who submits it to DLGF.
Any other questions about the annual spending plan? Is there a motion to approve the annual spending plan?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Becky. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mari. All those in favor of approving this annual spending plan, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes. That is the last item. Is there any other business to come before the commission? Seeing and hearing none. Do we take a motion to adjourn? We will adjourn the meeting.
Thank
It
you.
is 4:36. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.